Good morning.
Good morning.
And Kalimera.
Kalimera.
A few weeks ago, someone sent me an article that was a really amazing story. And at the top of this article, there was a video that was filmed in somebody's house. There was a woman in her kitchen who was washing dishes, and her pet German Shepherd was sitting right next to her. And as she's washing the dishes, very kind of in a mundane way, nothing looks very conspicuous about household chores. All of a sudden, the dog pops up and starts poking her with his nose on her leg. And the woman's like, shoo, what's gotten into you? What's going on right now? So the dog goes away for a few seconds and comes back and keeps kind of prodding her with his nose. And she keeps trying to shoo him away and continue to wash dishes. And finally, after about 2 or 3 of these times, the dog puts his front paws on top of the sink and tries to get her to stop washing the dishes. And as she tries to take him down from the counter and essentially kind of scold him and continue her work, as she turns around, she starts getting faint and starts passing out, and the dog runs underneath her to catch her as she falls over. She had a stroke. And even though she couldn't sense that it was about to happen, her animal could. And this article was about how this dog sensed every time she had some kind of a condition that she was being treated for, this woman, but this happened over and over and over again. So she started filming, or somebody did in her house, moments where, the dog is, let's say, lying over there on a rug, like asleep. Nobody's moving in the house. All of a sudden, boom, he pops up, runs over to her again, and she's passing out again. And every time he would run underneath her to catch her before she fell. It was really, really amazing. So the article was about, I'm not sure if it was about the dog specifically or about how this woman was eventually cured of this, but her animal, basically her companion in life, was able to sense this, and with complete disregard for his own personal, life, whatever his needs were, the dog basically said, I need to take care of my master. Regardless of what's happening with me, I need to put that aside and I need to run to her. What does she need? What does my master need? It's really quite remarkable to see these kinds of stories, and I'm sure those of us who have pets have seen this in life, right? When our animal can just sense something about us, if we're feeling sad, or God forbid if we have some kind of a health issue like this too, if there's some kind of, someone strange coming to the house, whatever it might be. St. Basil actually wrote extensively about God's creation and even about the animal kingdom specifically. And he actually, in one of his homilies, praised the nobility and humility of dogs specifically. And he says, look at how devoted they are to their master. They put their own dignity aside, and they say the only thing that matters is my master. And Basil was praising God's creation and how it responds to its creator. This season, brothers and sisters, we also celebrate someone putting aside their personal dignity. In today's gospel reading, there's a story about Jesus having a miraculous healing with someone who was bent over and could not straighten herself. And after the healing took place, he was chastised by the Pharisees and he had to respond to them. Seems pretty par for the course when it comes to Jesus' ministry. Seems pretty par for the course when it comes to gospel readings and stories. And yet, this gospel reading every year is put in proximity to Christmas. It's actually put a few Sundays before Christmas, because there is one reference in this story that we pay attention to around Christmas time. What is that? Well, again, the Pharisees were arguing with Jesus about doing work on the Sabbath day. Why are you healing? Why are you taking care of people? And Jesus' response is, on the Sabbath day, don't you untie your animal from what? The manger, and take it away to water it. But the story is not about the animals. The story's not about the animals. Let's just pause for a moment and reflect on just that. Do we know what a manger is exactly? In Hallmark stores and greeting cards and nativity sets, it looks very, very cute. And it is very nice. Baby Jesus was in there. But what is a manger exactly? We associate it perhaps as human beings with just part of the nativity set. A manger, my brothers and sisters, is a feeding trough. And I don't know if any of us have ever been to a farm to see how animals are fed. It's not always pleasant, and it's not always clean or nice or cute. And the Jews wouldn't have had pigs probably, but even so, there's all kinds of stuff that they put in a feeding trough for animals. God is the creator and the king of all creation. And yet when it came time for him to come to earth, did he deserve fanfare? Yes, he did. Did he deserve parades and trumpets and sounding brass? Yes, he did. Did he deserve armies to be marching in front of him, and chariots and horses and elephants and whatever else, going before him to proclaim his entrance into his kingdom? Yes, he did. But he chose not to do that. Instead, what did he do? When I say we celebrate, someone who disregarded their own dignity, it is God himself who disregarded his own dignity in entering his creation in the most humble way possible. He said, I'm going to put those things aside. It doesn't matter about me. It matters about you. Because I care about you, and I love you so much that I will come however I have to. And so little baby Jesus, 3 weeks from today, we're going to read about this more, was placed in a feeding trough. And that is how God entered his creation. His own dignity did not matter. And he sent a message to all of us in this way as well. Brothers and sisters, this is where we receive our instruction on how to live our own life. When we talk about how humility is so key of a virtue in all of the things that we do in the Christian life, and how sometimes in our day-to-day hustle and bustle, we sometimes run the risk of perhaps getting a little too wrapped up in our own needs and in our own, I have to do this or I have to do that, or little details which genuinely are important. But if we focus so much on ourselves and we focus entirely on what do I need right now, even if those are legitimate things like food and water and my house and everything else, but is it possible that we can become a little ball of anxiety and perhaps get a little myopic in our life about what really matters? About how, is it all about me? Or is it about this, if you will? It's funny how people measure happiness, quote unquote, and how in poor countries where they have nothing, they tend to rate happier than countries that have everything, for instance, just as an example. But this truly is the key, and that is humility. Putting aside one's dignity like that beautiful animal who only cared about his master, who put aside his dignity and said, enough about me, this is what matters. Because God himself did the same thing, amazingly. Some years ago, my former proestamino at the church I used to serve at said that he and some other pilgrims from the community took a trip to Mount Sinai, to St. Catherine's Monastery. And St. Catherine's Monastery, as we know, is the spot or thereabouts where Moses received the Ten Commandments from God. It has been a holy place in world religions for thousands and thousands of years. And there is a famous monastery that is still there to this day. And so when they went to this monastery, they went to the foot of the mountain, and they walked in, And the first thing they see is this dining area, and there's pilgrims coming in and out. And the only person they found was one monk who was essentially picking up plates and cleaning tables. And they walked in, and they don't really know where to go, and so they walked over to the one monk that they saw, and they said, "Excuse me, Father, we're looking for the abbot of the monastery," because the abbot, of course, gives his blessing for people to stay there and visit and so forth. And the monk says, okay, just give me 1 sec. Just give me just 1 sec. Just wait right there, and we'll take care of it. And as these pilgrims are coming in and out, they see this one monk picking up plates, walking over to the dishwasher, to the sink, washing dishes themselves, drying their hands, going to the next thing, cleaning the tables, doing all this work. After a few minutes of watching this monk do this, he says, if you go into the other room for visitors over there, I'll be with you in just a sec. And so they do. They go over there. And after waiting maybe 15, 20 minutes for this one monk who was taking care of everyone's needs as they were walking into the monastery, finally the monk comes over to where the visitors are. And he says, "Okay, so I understand you want to see the abbot." And they said, "Yes, we would like to see the abbot." And he sits down in front of them and says, "Okay, I'm the abbot." It's kind of like Yoda, huh? An abbot is essentially the bishop of that community. And yet they were absolutely floored. Their jaw dropped to the ground when they saw the highest monk in order cleaning tables and taking care of everyone's needs that were not only spiritual, let's just put it that way, picking up their plates and washing their dishes. Amazingly. St. Philaret of Moscow said, "Humility is the salt of all virtues." Humility is the salt of all virtues. And God gives us the blueprint, if you will. God, as the greatest king of all, sends a message and an example to us and says, don't worry about titles and about your own needs. Humility. Humility. Put aside your dignity, your own personal anxieties, and focus on this. And so, my brothers and sisters, as we celebrate and as we come closer to celebrating the Lord's Nativity, and we remember how he came into the world and how he demonstrated this humility and putting aside his own dignity for us, let us also endeavor this Christmas season to humbly live our life in the same way, that we too may achieve the salt of all virtues and bring not only spiritual health to ourselves in our own life, but to the world around us as well. God bless you. Amen.